so that I have this recorded as well. And if you're joining in on the fun, because there's always that few minutes where we have to be really entertaining on Facebook, because it will show that there's nobody here that's live yet. And then if there happens to be somebody, oh, it is a human. It is a human who is popping in to the window. So please feel free to say hello as everybody is joining, so I'll know who is there and who's not there. Just drop me a hashtag hello or just a simple hello over in the comments window to let me know that you're here and you're hearing me. And I'm not just talking to some empty, quiet crowd who's not there. Maybe if I hit the play button again on this. Like I said, again, we never know on Facebook until people kind of let us know that they're receiving us loud and clear. So if you would drop me a hello over in the comments section, that would be most deeply appreciated, not deeply appreciated. Hello, Garang, good. I'm glad that people are actually here, and we're gonna actually get rolling here in just a few minutes. Once I see, oh, good, there's Kellen Piney, he's here too. So hello, everyone who is just now joining us. What I want to know is, hey, and it's Patrick Egan. Patrick's here as well too. Now the whole gang is beginning to get here, and we may be able to actually start talking about some things rather than just talking a bunch of babble for a bit while we're waiting for people to get here. So what I would like for everybody to do before we get rolling, and I may ask people this a few times with the new people who kind of pop in, is if you are a newbie to astrology, meaning you know very little about astrology, and you type a hashtag newbie over in the comment section. If you're someone who has been working with astrology for a while, type in old school. And if you are someone who's been working with astrology for ages, you can type in old fart. There we go. Unless you're young and you've been working with astrology for a while. So destiny, purpose, and passion. What is this all about, and what are we here to talk about? Well, it's a new way, I feel, to work with astrology that is different than how a lot of people like to work with astrology. Okay, so what do I mean by how a lot of people like to work with astrology? Well, you'll generally find that the majority of people will come to astrology for prediction, right? And it's not necessarily that prediction is a wrong use of astrology. I'm not saying that. But it is, in my opinion, not necessarily the best use of astrology, right? Now, most of you who are here know me, but for those who don't, who are just coming in, I'm Michael Reed. I'm a professional astrologer working with the Vedic system of astrology with nearly 3 decades of experience in the astrological field. And during that particular time, of working with clients, thousands of clients globally, I've noticed a lot of things about astrology and how it works for people, and also how it tends to fail a lot of people too. And I'm never a big fan of astrology failing people. If I'm going to be an astrologer, I want astrology to really help people and to really help people on a very deep level. And the things that I'm going to share with you today are based upon things that I have learned over the years of working with astrology and an approach that I've developed after kind of learning that over the years of working with astrology. So let's go back to what we were talking about. We were talking about prediction and the good things about prediction and the not so good things about prediction, okay? So the good things about prediction are if you go to an astrologer and you ask the astrologer to predict something, and the astrologer predicts it, and you hear what you wanted to hear, then you're going to feel really happy, right? But if the astrologer tells you what you don't want to hear, you're not going to feel so happy. And if the astrologer tells you what you do want to hear, but then what you do want to hear doesn't come into being, you're not going to feel so happy. And if the astrologer tells you something that you don't want to hear and they are absolutely positively wrong, you're going to go, well, the astrologer is an idiot, but at the same time, I'm glad the astrologer is an idiot. Okay. If you're just dropping in now, can you please leave us a hashtag hello over in the chat window so I can know who's here and who's not as we're going along. So in short, prediction isn't a bad use of astrology, but there was a great astrologer. If you've been working with Vedic astrology for a while, you'll probably know his name. His name is K.N. Rao. And he's noted for saying that the best predictive techniques are accurate about 60% of the time. 60% of the time. So what does that mean? That means that, an astrologer can be wrong 40% of the time. I like to think with predictive techniques, myself and other astrologers who I know are about 70% accurate. But at the same time, there's always that chance that prediction will go wrong. Hello, Lily. Thank you for joining us. Lily, can you do me a favor and drop a hashtag newbie if you're absolutely new to astrology? Can you drop me a hashtag old school if you've been working with astrology for a while? And just jokingly, if you've been working with astrology for a long time, you can type in hashtag old fart, right? As a matter of fact, that's what I need to do over in the chat window right now, just to get the ball rolling. I need to type in hashtag old fart. There we go. Because I've been doing that. All right. So that shows us that astrology can be wrong an awful lot of the time when it comes to prediction. And when that happens, it doesn't always leave the client feeling like they're in the best psychological state. Okay. And that is not necessarily a good thing, obviously, because when people come to astrologers, they're coming to astrologers because they want to feel better about what's going on in their life. Let's face it, when somebody goes to an astrologer, and even if they're going to an astrologer for a prediction, they're going to the astrologer because they're feeling upset about something, or they're feeling a lot of anxiety about something, and they're wanting to know if that thing is going to be okay. Interestingly enough, in a lot of those instances, the client is going to hear something that they don't want to hear. Because if you're going to an astrologer for prediction, it's usually because something's not working well in your life. And when something's not working well in your life, you're hoping to hear that it's going to work better. And sometimes it does, but in a lot of instances with predictions, what you're going to hear is something that you don't want to hear. Now, when I speak to people about this, they go, yes, but isn't it better that you know the truth of the situation and you're able to accept it? Well, yeah, that might be okay if astrologers were 100% accurate 100% of the time when it comes to prediction, but we're not. There's always the chance that we can be wrong. And if we're wrong in an instance like that, then it can take a person's drive away from them, right? Somebody came to an astrologer and said, right, I have this desire to start my own business. Like, it's really something that I'm passionate about, and it's something that I'm inspired about, and it's something that I really want to do, and I want to know if I'm going to be successful doing it. And the astrologer looks at it, and they see that it's probably not going to work out in the best way. Immediately, what's going to happen? The person's going to decide they don't want to do a business. But what if the person's birth time was only slightly inaccurate and it was knocking something slightly out of bounds? What if the astrologer was just having an off day? All these things tie in to making a prediction. And suddenly something has been said to the client that took their inspiration away from them. Unless they have Mars and Aries, and then they're just going to get really PO'd at the astrologer, and hey, they'll just kind of, go on with it anyway. But the point being is prediction's not necessarily bad, but it doesn't always serve the highest purpose for the individual. So that was something that always kind of got, underneath my skin and bothered me, because I would be working with the client, and they would be going along and everything would feel absolutely okay. And they'd ask for a prediction and I'd give them a prediction. And then suddenly they heard something that they didn't want to hear. And you could feel the person's energy drop. You could feel the person's energy drop at that particular moment. And they began to feel uncomfortable. And that's not a pleasant thing, because you want to make a person, first of all, you want to give them wise counsel, regardless of what the situation is, but you don't want to take their hope away from them. I can think of one particular instance. There was a client who was feeling super depressed in their lives. And I spent probably the first 15, 20 minutes of our session getting to the root of what was bothering them. Right? And when we got to the root of it, we could find that it was actually anger. They had a lot of anger about something in their lives. I forget exactly what it was that they were upset about, but they were very angry and hadn't been doing anything and had lost hope. Well, when I got into that anger, suddenly the person got motivated. They got inspired. They got ready to go do something, to take action about it. And then the next thing that came out of their mouth was, how long is this difficult period that I'm in going to last? And then when you tell them, their energy begins to drop. And I knew that would happen. So I actually said to them, I said, I could tell you if you really wanted to know, but we just got you back in the space where you're ready to fight again and to do something about the situation that you're dealing with. And we don't want to take that away and have you go back into the mode where you're feeling really, really super depressed. And the person actually agreed with me. And so, we decided that there would probably be a better way of working together in order to deal with the situations that are there. So that's, part of the foundation of, after working with astrology for a while, what began to bother me and made me realize that there needs to be a better way of dealing with things and a better way of dealing with clients. And why I decided to develop what I now call the empowered approach to astrology. And this is something that I felt about astrology for a really long time. I went back and forth with, with ways that I was working with astrology and the best way that I wanted to help people, becoming a very predictive focused astrologer for a long period of time. But always in the back of my mind, I was feeling like there's something missing, and there's something where the client isn't really getting the help that they need. And that's something that's bothering me and something that I want to figure out how best to work with people. So I just kept on observing and listening and watching people, because that's something that I like to do. And over time, I began to notice certain ways and means in which one can get into the horoscope and really help people. I'm not going to go super deeply into all of those today, because I kind of still want to build a little bit more of a foundation to help you to understand the situation. But there are ways and means that you can really help clients with astrology beyond the concept of prediction, and in a way that's going to help them to go away in a manner that's going to improve their life and make them feel comfortable. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to type a question over in the chat window. I'll come back to it here and there throughout the talk that we're going to have tonight. Please feel free to put some things over there. So let's talk next about what the horoscope is. And I'd love to have everybody's response. So this is going to require that you're by your keyboard or by your phone, and you're actually able to type something in. So what I would like for you to actually type into the chat window is, do you think that a person is their horoscope, right? That's what I would love to hear. Is a person their horoscope? So in other words, if you look at a chart, is that the person? Type yes or no over in the comments section. I'll wait a moment or two just to see if what everybody thinks. In the interim, I'm going to do my ventriloquism act and bring the dummy out while I'm drinking water. Only kidding. But please feel free to type in over in the chat window if you think that somebody is their horoscope. Are we actually our horoscope? Okay, so here's what we've got. Garong says 75% the person is the horoscope. Helen says not really. What do Lily and Patrick think? Is the person the horoscope? I think that it shows the karma that the person has at the time they were born. Okay. How about Lily? You don't have to respond, Lily, but please feel free to do so. Okay. Here's the thing. I'm just going to go ahead and say what I have learned. Yeah, Lily says no. Okay. So what I think is a person is not their horoscope. You're not your horoscope, because all the horoscope really shows are your karmic tendencies. What do I mean by karmic tendencies? What we're predisposed to do at any moment in time, just naturally. What is the manner in which we are predisposed to behave at any moment in time? That's what your karmic tendencies are. That's what the horoscope is showing us. Okay? So the thing is you're not your horoscope. You're not. You're not even the indwelling consciousness that's experiencing your horoscope. If you really think about it, you're actually something that is much, much more than either of those things. Okay. And interestingly enough, if you go back and you explore the sacred texts on astrology, and I did say sacred texts because astrology is a sacred science. And as it's a sacred science, you have to have both the sanctity and you have to have the science. Otherwise, it becomes just a religion or it becomes just a science, right? But if you go back and you explore those texts, there is actually something in there that explains the fact that you are actually something that is much, much more than your horoscope. Okay? It's much, much more, something that's much, much more than your horoscope. I'm hoping the internet's staying stable because I sometimes have internet issues. It seems to be okay for right now. I'm going to see if I can find that document, and I'm going to bring it up on the screen for us here because it's really, really important for us to know. Okay, so the horoscope, somebody was saying the horoscope is our prarabdha karma, which is the karma that is very difficult to resolve. But that's the whole thing, is it's not impossible to resolve. We are predisposed to behave a certain way, but actually what we're here to do is to grow and expand beyond that predisposed way of behaving. So if we approach the horoscope in a manner that goes, I'm just my horoscope and I have no choice, then we're going to continue most likely repeating the same patterns. So I'm going to share this with you, and we may pop back out of this here in a moment. I just want to show it to you for now. There's a text, which is an ancient text upon which all the concepts in Vedic astrology are based upon. There's a few texts that are like that. Two that are very important are Jaimini's Upadesha Sutras and Brihat Parashara Horus Shastra. Okay, so we'll revisit this probably in part 2 of destiny, purpose, and passion, I just want to touch on it here briefly. And it says the supreme unborn spirit has had many descents. Janardana, which is a name of God that can make us feel concerned or uneasy so that we work through our karma. Supreme unborn spirit has had many descents. Janardana, in the form of the planets, rewards the fruits of the karma of the living beings. There we go. Your horoscope with the planets is the fruits of your karma. Okay? Destroying the strength of the Daityas, or the demonic race, increasing the strength of the Devas, or the angelic race, aiming to establish Dharma. The auspicious births proceed regularly from the planets. The avatar Rama from the sun, from the moon Krishna, Nadasima from Mars, Buddha from Mercury, Vamana from Jupiter, Bhargava from Venus, Kurma from Saturn, Sukara from Rahu, and from Ketu the avatar Meena, and all others. So everybody is planetary born. Those with Pada Atma, or the Supreme Soul as the larger portion, are also known as heavenly. Those with Jivatman as the larger portion are known as living beings. Now notice those with Jiva as the larger portion are known as living beings. It doesn't say those with Jiva as the larger portion have no Pada Atma. Okay, so it doesn't say they have no supreme soul, because they do, right? So we are not our horoscope, and we're not necessarily bound by our horoscope, which means we don't have to behave the way our horoscope indicates. We can bring attention to that. We can bring awareness to it. We can overcome the factors that are in the horoscope with time, with dedication, and with attention. So that also lets us know that we should not just accept something that our horoscope says in certain situations, or in all situations, really. So if you're not your horoscope, then does astrology leave you in a position where you have no guidance or way to interact with life? Absolutely, positively not, which brings me to the other way that people are most predisposed to working with astrology. And if you're just joining us, please, if you haven't already, just drop a hashtag hello, so I will know who is here, rather than just lurking in the corner going, ooh, I'm going to be quiet. People like to lurk. I like to lurk too. But, say hello if you don't mind, just so I know that you're here. Okay. The other way that people most often work with astrology is by using it to pick a good time to do something. Would it be a good time for me to start a business? Would it be a good time for me to get married? Right. So first of all, we don't need a cosmic permission slip from the universe, okay? Because that cosmic permission slip is already inside of you. If you're feeling that impulse, if it's driving you to do something, and if it's coming from your inspiration, if it's coming from your heart, and by heart, I don't mean your physical heart. I don't mean your emotions, although sometimes emotions can come into the equation. What I mean is that which drives you, your ethics, your inspiration, those things that just naturally flow through you and cause you to go, I want to start a business. I'm feeling compelled to do that. That would make me feel inspired. I want to get married or pursue a relationship. That would make me feel inspired. Always follow that over and above looking at your horoscope to tell you what to do. Bear with me. Here's a good reason as to why that can happen. Okay? So let's say that you go to an astrologer and you say to the astrologer, I want to know when it would be a good time to start a business. In essence, what you're actually saying is, I want to pick the time to start a business where immediately when I start that business, it's going to go well. That's what you're saying. But have you ever thought that perhaps in starting a business, it can be helpful to like face some challenges or feel like you're failing so that you can learn from those experiences and actually then be more successful when the time comes up for you to be successful, right? So always follow your heart because it's knowing something and it's trying to take you in a certain way. It's not that astrology should tell a person when to do something and when not to do something. That's kind of on a certain level, assuming that the universe always just wants everything to happen smoothly. And we're here facing challenges because the horoscope shows our karmic tendencies. And we're meant to be driven by our heart, by our sense of purpose, in order to resolve that karma. An inevitable part of that is you're going to face challenges. That's okay, right? Especially a good thing to do is in facing those challenges, know yourself, know who you are, know what you want, know what drives you, which really all those things are the best purpose of astrology. Knowing yourself, accepting yourself, loving yourself, understanding yourself, knowing who you are and what drives you and what you want to do, finding that particular space, sticking with it, reminding yourself of who you are over and over and over again. When a challenge comes up, feel the challenge, experience the difficulty, let yourself get angry, let yourself feel sad, let yourself have those experiences that you're ultimately going to have. But remind yourself, when you remember, remind yourself who you are, what you're here for. Then, when the challenge moves, you expand into a greater version of yourself, but always knowing who you are. Astrology really shows a path of unfolding, a path of blossoming. And I often catch a lot of flack for what I'm going to say next, but I'm going to say it anyway, which is, in my opinion, astrology is a yoga. Now, for those of you who think yoga is just physical exercises, yoga is a way of attaining union with the Supreme. So astrology is a form of yoga. It shows you what you're here to work on, what you're here to work through, who you are, how you can let yourself be driven by that experience in order to go through what it is that you're meant to learn. So I'm going to also share a brief story of a particular situation wherein this particular method of trying to choose a good time to do something, or whether one should do something or not through astrology, it just doesn't really work, really. Because, astrology, again, shows the karmic tendencies. It shows what we're predisposed to do at any given moment in time, So if that is the case, then the next bit will really make sense. So I had someone who came to me who had a job offer, right? And they were really inspired by this job offer, really enthusiastic about it. If they took it, it was going to involve uprooting their family, moving with their family halfway across the country. And they let me know, I have a tendency to take these job offers. And then when I get the job, I feel not so satisfied with the position. And if I'm going to uproot my family, one part of me feels like I need to know that I'm not going to get uninspired by that particular position. So I asked them when they would be taking the job. And sure enough, following the karmic patterns in the horoscope, you could see that the person was likely going to feel uninspired after they took the job. So that's what I, said to them. And they said, oh, and they got depressed immediately after I said that and went, so I shouldn't take the job then. And what I said to them afterwards was, well, if we're using astrology in this way and predicting, then what this is saying is that if you stay with the job that you're in, you'll feel depressed as well. You'll be uninspired. So really, it boils down to you following your heart. And you feel more driven to go in the direction of taking that particular job, even if it leaves you feeling uninspired, or just staying in the position that you're in with it feeling uninspired. The answer to that particular question for the individual was the fact that they felt that it would be better for them to follow their heart and take the job, right? That way, at least you're being driven by your heart, by your ethics, by what inspires you, by what motivates you, which leads me to the next thing. Pardon me. So there is a particular concept. Hello, Charlie. Thank you for joining us. Can you tell us, Charlie, if you're a newbie to astrology by typing hashtag newbie? If you've been working with astrology for a while, please type hashtag old school. And if you're someone who's been working with astrology for a long time, my favorite, which is hashtag old fart. Okay. So we were talking about the getting to the space of going with your heart and what inspires you, even if astrology shows that things are going to go in a certain direction. Pardon me. And just, because just sharing this with Charlie because she just showed up late. So what we were talking about is if the horoscope shows your karmic tendencies, then it shows what you're predisposed to do at a particular moment in time. And if someone comes to an astrologer and asks the astrologer if they, should take a job because they have a habit of getting uninspired when they take specific jobs, and in this particular instance, the person had a job offer, and taking that job would mean moving their family across the country, and they wanted to know if, like, they took that job, would they be uninspired with that job? Well, really what the horoscope is saying in that instance is if you stay with your present job, you're predisposed to feeling disappointed. If you go and take the other job, you're predisposed to feeling disappointed. So if the energy you're going to be dealing with that particular moment in time is one of being predisposed to feel a little bit disappointed with your work, why don't you at least go in the direction where you're following your heart, following your ethics, following your inspiration, the thing that drives you? And I was leading into another concept that I want to share with that. There is a concept in Vedic thought that when you're reaching your final breaths, when you're reaching the end of your life, those things that your mind is attaching to in your last moments, maybe even your last days, right, are the things that you carry over with you as karmic patterns into your next lifetime. So if you reach the end of your life and you're reflecting back over your life previous, and you're looking at, how you tended to interact with your life during that particular time, and you're going, every decision that I made was something that I just thought, notice that word, every decision I made was something that I thought would be the correct thing to do to make things go smoothly, right? Every decision that I made, I thought would be the correct thing to do. That's just going with your mind and letting your mind sort through the whole situation. And chances are you may have along the way ignored your desire, ignored things that I can't see. Sorry, just a second. I can't see the chat room. I can only see the normal comment section. Lily, can you please try? Oh, you shouldn't see a chat room. You should only see the comment section and be able to type a comment into the chat section. Is that what you mean? So please share a comment in the comment window. You might try refreshing your page as well. Okay, so what I was saying is that, in those last moments, if we look back on our life and we go, I always did what I thought I should, chances are you didn't go with the things that drive you. You didn't go with the things that inspire you. You didn't follow your heart. So you're likely going to have a lot of regrets. Well, like the age-old saying, regrets weigh a ton. And you're likely going to be creating more karmic burden from that regret, because that's what your mind's focusing on, is things that you regretted, things that are unfinished, business that is not done yet. So naturally, you will be coming back in order to resolve those karmic patterns. But imagine if you reach the end of your life and you went, my entire life, I went with my heart. I did what felt the right thing to do, by my dharma, by my ethics, by my inspiration, by what naturally drives me. Lily, it might be a problem with your particular browser. You might try like refreshing the page, closing the browser, because it seems like it's a browser issue on your end. I do apologize that you're having that problem, though. If you reflect back on your life, and you're looking back on your life, and you're saying to yourself that I always went with my heart, I always followed my inspiration, I always followed what ethically felt correct, then you'll likely be reflecting back and going, I don't have any regrets. Things didn't always go the way that I wanted them to, but I always followed my heart and I stood by myself. That path stands a greater chance of resolving karma, right? So again, if we make every decision from our head, we're likely going to have regrets and create more karmic patterns. If we make every decision from the heart, we're likely going to burn a lot of karma, right? And so the path to greater clarity and to less karmic luggage, so to speak, lies in the path of the heart. So, always relying on astrology to tell you what you should do or what you should not do is probably not the best use of it. But using astrology to know yourself, to know what's driving you, to understand what is perhaps blocking you and work on those particular things, that's an excellent use of astrology. And you always go with your heart rather than going with your head, right? So that was another fundamental that kind of helped me to build my concept of what I like to call the empowered approach to astrology. So I'm just going to recap a little bit, and then we'll see if people have any questions. I did receive your last comment, Lily, about typing, losing the sound of the video. Try refreshing your page after that. Okay, so let's recap a little bit. So you're not your horoscope. Your horoscope is your karmic tendencies, what you're naturally predisposed to do at any given moment in time. But you don't have to go with those karmic patterns if you know that it's a pattern. So knowing yourself, accepting yourself, loving yourself at the foundation of anything gives you leverage on those karmic patterns. Following your heart rather than your head in situations leads you towards greater karmic resolution, right? So using astrology in order to determine whether you should or whether you shouldn't do something based upon whether it's a good time to do it is perhaps not the best use either. Because if you're feeling it and the impulse is there, and you're not being driven by your fear, you're not being driven by your ego, you're not just going, I think I should do this, but instead you're going, no, this is who I am and this is the way I need to go. Going with that way of going, this is who I am and this is where I need to go, is always the right way. And what I began to notice over years of working with astrology that confirmed this for me even more deeply was the fact that in those instances where I was doing predictive astrology and I was dealing with someone who was, more inspiring humans, and I will be honest and say I've done sessions with people who've been really, really inspiring, and done sessions with people who have not been quite as inspiring. But when you're doing sessions with people, and that's not a judgment, everybody comes to astrologers for different reasons, and I help the person, regardless of the situation. But when you're dealing with people who are paying more attention to what naturally drives them, or in short, who are focused on getting to know themselves better, quite often difficult things that one might look at from a predictive level don't turn out quite the way as expected, right? And when you're dealing with people, when you're dealing with situations and with people where it's more just waiting for the astrology to provide something that happens in their life, then you generally end up finding that the situations don't always go so well for that person because they're not following their heart, which is really at the root of it, what they're needing to get more into the space of doing. I'll provide you with the story for that too. There was a particular situation of someone who was wanting to get divorced because they were living with their spouse and the relationship had pretty much ended and it was just feeling, really uncomfortable for them. So they came to me to see whether or not they, were going to be able to get divorced. All I can really do on my end is look at the factors that are there that would create divorce and make the prediction, which I did at that particular point. And so that time came and went. The client came back to me and they said, "You said I was going to get divorced and it didn't happen. What went wrong?" And so I asked them, I said, "Did you try to get divorced?" And they said, "No." And I said, "Well, that's what happened. You didn't try to get divorced, really. The karmic energies, the ways that things would naturally tend to go, they still came to the surface. You're still distant from your spouse, which is separation from the spouse, which would be the same thing that would show with divorce. There's still tension between you, which would be the same thing that would show with divorce. There's also the break of the relationship. So we have a choice in how we approach things. We may not always have a choice in how things go in our life, right? But we do have a choice in how we approach things. And where us with our choices, us with our free will, meets those events in our lives is the border, poof, where we begin to resolve our karma. Always go with what's in here. Don't always go with what's up here unless it's driven by what's here as well. And let yourself be aligned with that constantly. These are the things that are at the cornerstone of what I like to call the empowered approach to astrology, an approach where we see you as the co-creator, the conscious co-creator of your own natural experience of consciousness. Someone who always has a choice and who recognizes that in exercising that choice and being driven from their heart, that they're going to be resolving the karmic patterns in their horoscope rather than, kind of blocking their resolution of the karmic patterns in their horoscope. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them over in the chat window. Again, as I mentioned, I will, handle them here and there along the way. And can everybody hold on one moment? Okay. Sorry about that. There was a knock on the door. Okay, so if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat window and we will answer them when they tend to arise for you. So let's go back to this concept of resolving karma, okay? And let's talk also about the concept of knowing your heart, because that's a big one for a lot of people. Knowing your heart is really important, right? And a lot of times it's hard to understand our heart and it's hard to know our heart because the head has a nasty habit of getting in the way. And the head is making those decisions based upon fears, based upon concerns, based upon uncertainty, based upon self-doubt, based upon all those negative emotions that it's sometimes very difficult for us to get past and of which we're all subject to from time to time. So I acknowledge knowing your heart is not always the easiest of circumstances. And it's a process. It's not something where you can just go, ooh, quickly, poof, I'm going to like stop making decisions from the head and I'm just going to make decisions from your heart, from my heart. Well, let's put it this way. You can do that, but it's a process that will unfold along the way in terms of how that is actually going to work out. You'll have to get more accustomed to it. You have to get to know yourself. You have to tune into yourself. And that's where astrology can really serve an exceptionally wonderful purpose, because at its essence, astrology will show your skills. It'll also show things that you're inspired by. It'll also show things that you're passionate about. It will also show what you're here to naturally express to the world. All of those things are also shown in your horoscope, as well as those things that limit you along the way. Now, let's use that word, that limit you. It doesn't mean that those things that limit you are things that will always limit you. It means those things that seemingly limit you are bringing lessons into your life for you to learn and for you to integrate and for you to expand beyond. All of those things are there in your path for you to gain something from. Okay, so anything that's in your horoscope that limits you is there for you to bring to your awareness, for you to know how to work with, for you to know how to heal, right? Let's say, for instance, because I do a lot of work with the nodal axis, Ketu and Rahu, and we'll talk more about that most likely in the next session that we're going to do tomorrow, right? So if you're dealing with a situation, I've had situations where I've dealt with where it's become obvious in the person's horoscope, where the person has been through a pattern of perhaps, having people get angry with them, or maybe having people get violent with them from them just expressing themselves, right? So naturally, that's going to create a pattern in the individual that's going to make it so that when they feel like stepping into their strength, this resistance comes up and they go, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if that feels safe. And so there's the limitation that keeps them from being able to step into their fulfillment. And that limitation, maybe it served a purpose at one point because they were in a position where really if they did do those things, they would have to confront all of those issues. But they've held on to it past its sell-by date, and they don't necessarily need to do that again. Now they're entering a phase of their existence where they're being asked to step into their strength, where they're being confronted with the potential of really blossoming into something that's more fulfilling for them. Only that same pattern comes to the surface of going, no, it's not safe. Much better to do this. And that's something that then needs to be healed. It's something that needs to be worked with and dealt with, through time. And there's ways of doing that too. And those are other things that are involved in what I like to call the empowered approach to astrology. And if there's time to touch on some of those in the next class, I may get to some of them this time too, then I will definitely do so. But the karmic story, which is what we're beginning to talk about now, is really important because it lets us know those things that we naturally resort to that limit us, right? Or those things that we naturally resort to that serve us from time to time. And then we begin to naturally know our strengths and our weaknesses. We begin to see the things that drive us as an individual. We begin to see the things that make us consider not going in the direction we should go into as an individual. And in short, we begin to know ourselves. We begin to know our heart. We begin to know the things that drive us. And it becomes a process over time as we get to know ourselves better of less thinking about what we should do and more just knowing what we should do because it's just what naturally feels right. Over time, the ego mind, which is very necessary. I want to touch on that here in a moment. The ego mind begins to fade out of the way, and we begin to know more of the self, know more of the soul, rather than just connecting to the ego mind. Now, that word gets, tossed around a lot, and quite often the ego gets a really bad reputation. But the ego is very necessary while we're navigating our experience of consciousness, because it gives us a sense of individuality that we wouldn't otherwise have in situations when we really need that sense of individuality. It makes it so that we get into a space where we're able to feel confident with our decisions. That confidence is very important because we have to be able to make a decision. Otherwise, we would just sit here if we just went, okay, well, in most of those instances, we would just sit here going, okay, well, I just am going to do what I'm guided to do. We might just be sitting here waiting for that guidance to appear, right? Whereas if you have a nice, healthy ego, then you feel confident in your decisions. You trust yourself. That's a healthy ego. A healthy ego trusts itself. A healthy ego connects to the soul and lets the soul guide it. But without that, when there's an unhealthy ego where the person just goes, I shouldn't have any ego at all, that it's like it's not going to naturally just evolve that way. Because ego doesn't always mean egotistical. It doesn't also, mean that you're not going to attain yoga or attain union. It just means that, that you need that ego to navigate your choices until you reach a point where you no longer see the ego, you just see your soul. And that takes lifetimes, right? So, knowing your karmic story, knowing who you are, knowing what you're driven by, knowing things that you're needing to work on, things that you're needing to resolve, it gives you what you need. It helps you to understand your soul. It helps to guide your actions, and it places you in the position where you're able to make over time decisions that are more heart-led rather than decisions that are led by your head. Now, does that necessarily mean, right, that if you know your karmic story and you know who you are and you always make decisions based upon your heart, that everything that you want is just going to come into being at every single given moment in time? No, it doesn't mean that at all. Does it mean that you'll be okay with whatever comes into being? Well, mostly. Okay, and I'm only hesitant about saying yes because it's a process and it's something that happens with over time, and we have to let ourselves feel what we're going through, and we have to let ourselves experience what we're experiencing, and we need to remain aligned with who we are as an individual through those times, through those difficulties, and that's what actually brings the blossoming, right? So if we're not okay with it, we need to go, I'm not okay with this. This makes me upset. And that's a way of grieving our pain and grieving the experience that we're going through so that we can move through things. And so we can listen to it. Yeah, here's the thing. That's a good question, Kellen. And I did see your question, Patrick. I'm going to make a little mental bookmark here. Okay. And I'm going to answer a couple of questions here. So Kellen's asking, so listening to heart is synonymous with listening to the soul. Here is the thing, most people have heard of chakras, right? And a lot of times people kind of expect them to be connected to the body. They're connected to, you can understand them as being connected to energy centers, which are related to the body, but they're actually something that's much more than that. They're just more like your etheric body, right? So the heart chakra is called anahata. And it's interesting because I went the other day, and there's actually a post on my Facebook page about it. And I went to look up all the translations of anahata in Sanskrit, because Sanskrit's a remarkable language, and you'll find that there are several different meanings for words, and all those meanings are applicable in terms of understanding that word. Anahata means unwounded. Unwounded is one of the meanings. It's also the sound that occurs without striking, right? So when we get beyond that feeling of feeling wounded in life, which we're healing that constantly throughout our existence, when we get beyond that realm of interference, of the ceaseless, incessant chatter that goes on inside of us that's driven by dualism, then the heart chakra becomes clear. So I use the word heart because I'm talking about getting better with, over time, connecting to that feeling of the sound that is created from being unstruck, meaning two things not coming against each other. Instead, it's pure. And that was another meaning of it. It translated roughly as pure and unwounded, going past that energy of feeling wounded by life. So I mean heart, but I mean spiritual heart, right? So it's not just soul, because soul is something that's beyond just your spiritual heart. And that's a difficult concept to understand, I acknowledge. So somebody said, do I agree that 75% of our chart is karmically set and 25% is free will? I would say I don't think we necessarily need to have percentages in that particular capacity. I think it's less about things are set and we have no choice, and much more about understanding that the things that happen in your life are just because it's a predisposition for things to occur in a certain way. But that predisposition for you to perhaps feel a certain way at a certain time or to react in certain ways doesn't mean you just go through life going, I am a zombie, must react in this way, and I have no choice. No, you don't. You pay attention, you learn, you take it in, you integrate, you grow, and you hopefully expand beyond that. And then over time, you begin to see, I don't have to respond in this way. I don't have to react in this particular manner. You can also almost associate it to like weather patterns, right? If you know if weather is going to be a certain way at a certain time, that it's better for you to dress a certain way. But it doesn't mean that you let that control your life. If you go, well, my heart's saying I don't really want to wear like, a raincoat today and go stand out in the rain. I'd much rather go out and dance in the rain. So I don't really feel like I need to be told what to do in that particular instance. Instead, I need to just go let my heart move me through life's existence. Similar thing, a lot of times people like to go to astrologers to see, is this the person I should marry? Well, do you love the person? Do you see merit in that? Is that something that you want to do? Does it feel ethically correct? Make the choice from there. Don't let astrology make the decision for you. So the karmic story is not about you being controlled or dictated to. It's about you going through experiences and letting yourself blossom forth through those particular experiences so that you begin to know yourself better, you begin to trust yourself better, and you begin to, feel like, what? I just want to go through life passionately. I want to let myself experience things. I want to have inspiration. If there's ups, I'll experience the ups fully and I'll enjoy them with every single iota of my heart. If they're downs, I'll let myself go through that and purge and cleanse out the other side. Whatever the case is, I'm going to let myself become more pure over the course of my life. So astrology, in my opinion, should never dictate to us. As a matter of fact, when predictions come true in astrology, the predictions are coming true because it's showing the individual behaving in a certain way that they were predisposed to in their horoscope, right? That's why predictions come true, because the person's just naturally reacting in alignment with their predispositions. And that doesn't mean that, oh, well, if I want everything to go well, I should just behave in alignment with this karmic predisposition. It means you should let your heart guide you. And whatever the experience that you're going through is going to serve you and it's going to help you. So is that me cosmically poo-pooing upon prediction. No, I'm just saying that there's a realm where we need to go beyond prediction with astrology, and we need to go in the direction of what's going to help the individual, what's going to empower them and make them feel more whole, what's going to put them in deeper touch with themselves. And tomorrow, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into just briefly some of the techniques that I use in terms of the empowered approach to astrology, so that you're able to understand a little bit more about it. It's not going to go into anything technical. It's much more just going to give you some concepts that I work with that help me to align my clients with the path that they're needing to be on in order to really begin to feel like they're expanding beyond those predispositions that they're just naturally prone to reacting to. Okay. So just in short, to share with you and perhaps summarize today, and then I'll see if there's any other questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them over in the comment section or in the chat window. If you're having, because I know that Lily was saying she was having trouble with the browser, type it in, go back and watch it after the session, see if you have any trouble with it, and type it into the comment section. I'll come back later and I'll respond to things too that I'm not able to respond to here. So, in short, you're not your horoscope. It shows the karmic predispositions, but you get to choose, whether that's a way that you want to be disposed to behaving or whether it's a way you don't want to be disposed to behaving. And you have a choice of applying your energy in that direction and bringing your attention and your awareness to it and expanding beyond those things that you're naturally predisposed to, rather than giving in constantly to the stress or the chatter or the self-conflict, which is keeping you from being connected to your heart. Remember, anahata means unstruck or unwounded. So instead, you're going more into those wounds without the intent of healing them, rather than going into them with the intent of healing them and getting to know yourself better and working through things better so that you can more naturally express who you are and what you're here to do. So your horoscope doesn't define you. It doesn't control you. And so therefore, the best use, in my opinion, of astrology is getting to the root of who you are. And if you're working with prediction at all, understanding, okay, well, here's a time period that's approaching where I may be having to work on this and listening to these things in my life. And here's an opportunity to grow in this direction, rather than expecting things to turn out a specific way. Because when you're expecting things to turn out a specific way, you're using astrology in a manner where you're trying to predict something in a manner that ultimately you're going to have some inconsistencies in. Whereas if you're using it to understand yourself, you'll be able to confirm that within yourself. And so it's not a way that's going to fail you in that particular direction. We'll talk more about the karmic story in the next session. I'll probably go into Rahu and Ketu a little bit, the nodal axis, talk a little bit about nakshatras, things along those lines, what your horoscope actually is. Again, I kind of touched on that briefly. Tomorrow night will be held inside of Zoom. So we're not going to be doing it in the Facebook group tomorrow. I'll send out a Zoom link. I'll post it here in the Facebook group. In addition to that, I'm going to send it to everybody who's on the mailing list. If you're not on the mailing list, join it anyway. I'm going to give away a free gift tomorrow night. And I also have a special announcement tomorrow night as well that I'm excited to share with you. But if you join the mailing list, then I'm going to enter people whose names are on the mailing list in a drawing for a free gift tomorrow night. So you might want to look for the post in the Facebook group that takes you there and go join that. There's much more I want to cover tomorrow. Probably go a little bit longer tomorrow, like about an hour and a half, so we can go into some of these things. And I'm going to deal with one more question that we have over here. If anybody else has any additional questions, please feel free to ask. Are there any divination or astrology software programs that I use in my consultations, or just Kala? For those who don't know, Kala is Vedic astrology software. I use Kala in my consultations, but I also use listening to my clients because I do a lot of work with what are called nakshatras, and some people are not familiar with what nakshatras are, so I'm not just going to assume that everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say that, because there's a lot of newbies to astrology who will be watching this too. So I do a lot of work with the lunar mansions, the nakshatras, and through doing that and knowing that symbolism, you start noticing key words that people use in their speech, or things that they talk about, or ways that they behave. And that kind of carries me into ways to work better with them. So in short, in answering your question, I don't use anything else, but I don't like just use software and just like read things blindly from the chart. I also use the chart as well as listening to my client and working with them, because I believe it's about taking people on a journey into themselves where they find themselves and grow from that experience, rather than just doing a simple reading of saying you are this, you are that. Instead, I want to work with the person and help them to find who they are, tune into that, make decisions. And I'll touch more on that tomorrow night. So let's see if anybody else has any last minute questions. I'll give you like another minute or so. Throat's getting a little bit tired tonight, so stopping a little bit earlier than I had originally planned. Everybody's saying thank you. So what I will do is I will just call that a day for now. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Tune in here tomorrow. I'll put the Zoom link in the group for you to join, and we'll go more deeply into some of these concepts that we worked with. Please take care and talk to everybody really soon. Bye now.